if we're going to talk about myths and misconceptions, what are the big ones out there, and what do you have to say about them?
Yeah, it's so prevalent. We're actually writing part 2 of a big paper we did a few years ago on the myths and misconceptions of creatine. But the three biggest ones is, does creatine lead to an increase in fat mass? And we've clearly shown now through meta-analysis and position stand papers that when you take creatine, maybe the scale will go up acutely, but at the end of the day, that improvement on the scale is either water retention or lean tissue mass. We actually see a decrease in fat mass percentage and absolute amount of fat with creatine supplementation. That probably goes with maybe a little bit of errors they make when they're taking creatine, maybe too much too soon. The second, it does not have any detrimental effects on kidney or liver function. So that's another big one. A lot of people, when they go to their doctor, they'll say, oh, my creatinine was high. And I'm like, yes, you should have told them you were taking creatine supplementation, because when creatine is metabolized in skeletal muscle specifically, it's released as creatinine. So therefore, you're going to have more creatinine in the blood. And that does not necessarily mean your estimated GFR is impaired. The third one that we often see, does creatine actually cause steroid-like effects? No, it's a sort of a hydrophilic compound. But the fourth one, and for those who can see me, and this is the biggest, is, does creatine cause baldness? And it still goes back to the single study in rugby players. And we can talk about this briefly, but they gave 20 grams a day to a young group of males that were training, playing rugby. And yes, this hormone called DHT, which is the derivative of testosterone, and it's been linked to hair follicle loss and thinning, went up. Now, it went up in the normal biological range, just like when you go to the doctor, you measure your blood glucose or cholesterol. But when they took placebo, there was no change. And when you look at this, they measured serum or blood DHT, which has no correlation whatsoever to the cell. So at the end of the day, people sort of get really hell-bent on this, that, oh, DHT went up. That is, I'm very hesitant to take creatine. I've studied over 1,000 individuals, and not a single person has ever come to me and say, hey, Darren, whatever you're giving me is making my hair thin.
Well,
But when people look at me, they're like, well,
Darren, it's not just you. It's not just you. When I think of the major names associated with the research, Eric Rawson, Craig Sale, Scott Forbes. I mean, yes, there's something there. Come on.
Yeah. Well, and so the best way to argue this is, since no study has ever said it doesn't, we say there's no evidence to show that it does. But until a study says, we didn't see any effect, the jury is still out. But we're not seeing how there may be another mechanism. If it does, it's probably not related to serum DHT, but those studies, I believe, were planned. It just hasn't been done. But I can honestly say, that is the most prevalent question I get. I could literally show you evidence that creatine cures cancer, but the person says, great, does it cause baldness? It's unbelievable how this is sort of the main area of concern.
Correlation does not equal causation.
And then they look at me and they look at others, and I'm like, I was going bald before I took creatine, but I'll blame mom for that. So